Welcome back from the break, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through this episode of Independent Thought. So we have some more questions here with our candidate, Christopher Coburn. We were just talking about housing and, the effects that it can have on people, but I want to talk about a specific effect that it's having, not just on people in Bozeman, but people, all over the place in this country, which is when people can't afford their homes, sometimes they get displaced, they become, homeless, and people who are experiencing homeless, we are seeing this happening across this state, across this country. But I want to focus on Bozeman here. What is the role of the local government there to help people who are experiencing homelessness? Like, how exactly can you help these people during their time of need? A lot of the people who are displaced because they can't afford their homes in Bozeman.
Yeah, that's a really good question and something I think about a lot. And I think, it comes down to how you view and what role you think in general local government has in the community. And for me, local government's role is to really be creating the conditions in which everybody who calls that place home is able to thrive, has opportunities to thrive. And I think that housing is a critical and crucial part of that. So I think, across the country, and including here in Montana and in Bozeman, the city has a responsibility in many ways to make sure that people have resources that they need. So I think, we are working as a community to bring about a full-time year-round shelter, so that people who need that sort of support, who need that sort of place to go, will have it. Right now, we have a temporary shelter that's open for a few months out of the year when it's really cold out, which is important, but we need to do more. I think that we could be strengthening and working with our nonprofit partners to get people housed. Frankly, that's what we should be doing. We should be creating housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. And it's right. Easier said than done, but I think that it's possible. I think that there are ways, there are communities across the country and across the world, really, that are doing that. And I think that we should be doing that too. So the way that I approach those conversations with folks around people, because we do hear from people who are being displaced and who are experiencing homelessness. And we do hear from the other side, people who are concerned with the growing number of people we have in our community who are experiencing homelessness. And my response is coming from a position of compassion and of really understanding that the way that we solve chronic homelessness is to get people housed and to provide the types of community services like behavioral health care and transportation and childcare that people need.
Right. And there are several reasons that lead into people becoming, homeless. And I kind of want to just touch on one of them a little bit more and specifically right now, because in talking with people that I know in Bozeman, one of the things they talk about is that, while wages are going up in your community, they don't exactly match what people are seeing in housing prices. Like, for instance, if you're making $15 an hour in Bozeman right now, that roughly pans out to $31,000 a year. And if you were to see what one bedroom prices are going for in Bozeman right now, we're talking around $1,500. And so they say that, if to not be like, I guess you would say like rent burdened, you'd want to be making at least, your rents should be around like 30% of your income. Well, if that was the case, then you would have to be making around $55K a year just to have that apply to you in the city of Bozeman. Now, a lot of people are making $55K a year, and the plans for affordable housing do seem a little far out, even if you start implementing them immediately. So in the meantime, what can the city do in the meantime to help these people who just cannot seem to make enough money to afford to live in their home?
Yeah, I think there's a few things we can do. One of the things that we can do that we are doing is something that I really strongly advocated for during our budget conversations when deciding how we were going to spend some of our American Rescue Plan funds. And I was successful in securing $500,000 to help people who are still experiencing impacts from the pandemic, including having a hard time paying their rent. So that's just one small example. That's not nearly enough, and not everyone qualifies for that. But those are the things that we could be doing, is to be saying, hey, we understand that, as we work to build affordable housing and to sort of correct our housing crisis in all the ways that we can, that people are being displaced. And so I think it's a responsibility of the city of Bozeman to have some levels of support. And that could look like helping people pay for rent, if they're at risk of losing their home, right? I think the part of affordable housing is not just creating new housing opportunities, but maintaining the ones that you have. And so that means keeping people in those houses. I also think there's this, piece of the equation that if we were to be able to help people and provide the types of services that they need, that are that they're spending, huge amounts of their disposable income on, and I say disposable almost as a joke because I don't know anybody who has income they don't need. But that could be helping people out with the costs of things like childcare, making it easier for people to work full time or work more often if they didn't have to worry about the cost of childcare. Making things like behavioral health care more accessible, because those are things that are expensive that people are having to choose between, paying for their housing and paying for behavioral health care. And we should be able to support people and not make them have to make that sort of decision. So that's just a way of saying that there are direct supports that I think we could be doing to be helping people pay for rent and stay in housing, while we also work with intention to build specifically affordable housing that will be affordable to folks. And while we're doing that, there's also ways that we could help support people and helping them to get the services that they need that are making it harder for them to pay for housing. So I think there's a few things that we could be doing. The truth is that the state of Montana makes it exceedingly hard for local governments to support people in the way that we need to support people. So we can't, as a city of Bozeman, we can't really do anything about how much rent people are being charged, right? We could, ask nicely, we could plead, we could say, hey, please don't raise the cost of rent, but we can't do anything that really interferes with that sort of the tenant-renter relationship. That's really clear in state law. So I get questions a lot about, can we, just, put a freeze on rent increases? And unfortunately, that's not something that we can do. So there are just a few examples like that where we can't do everything that I would like us to do, but there are things that we can do, and there's things that we are doing. And I think that, if I'm elected commissioner again this November, those things will not be lost track of.
Right. And it's just a little side note for those listening. What he's trying to say here is that, there are some restrictions that the city cannot do because of the state government. So those down ballot races on your ballots for state house and state senate, don't forget to vote in those, in those elections every 2 years. But, kind of like transitioning away from that right now, I want to kind of circle full back to a conversation we were having in the first part of the episode where we were talking about, the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And this does play a role in, people who are experiencing homeless as well, because we know that people who are experiencing homelessness also, we have seen from the CDC that says that, cases of coronavirus do tend to spike when people do get displaced. And so obviously the vaccine is a conversation that has been proliferating through our country right now. And there are some people who are still hesitant to get the vaccine. Now, as someone who worked in the healthcare industry and now who is, trying to become, a commissioner for the city of Bozeman, what exactly is your role in helping people get the vaccine who still are on the fence about it or who just haven't gotten it yet? Like, where exactly do you fill that void?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of ways that we could help to fill that void. And I happen to be working at the intersection of a lot of those ways. I think, as a public official, as a public health professional, as a community health advocate, I sort of spend most of my days really thinking and working towards getting more people in our community fully vaccinated against COVID-19. So one way that I think we can do it, that we are doing, but I think we could be doing more of, is making sure that people have really easy access to COVID vaccines. And so that looks like more than just making them free. It looks like bringing them out to the community where people are at. So I run this program where we bring COVID vaccines to people at events. We bring them to community gatherings. We park outside downtown and give them to people who are waiting in line for brunch. We really try to make it as easy as possible for people to get the vaccine. That's one way, just to create easy access to them. Another thing we could be doing, and that we are doing, I don't mean to say we're doing a lot of these things. There's just always room to be doing more. And I think these are things that I'm really passionate about. And the other, so one of those ways is to continue to communicate with people about how safe and effective COVID vaccines are. And, not use like a shame-based approach or sort of a fear-based approach, but in education-based approaches says, here's what the facts are about this vaccine, and continue to rely on those truths. And I think that's proving to be something that people are really paying attention to, because it's, if you are hearing misinformation, that's subject to change. The facts are always going to be the same, and we can sort of lean on those sort of talking points. And I think, a lot of communities across the country are thinking about ways to incentivize COVID vaccines. So rewarding people and encouraging people to get vaccines who maybe would be swayed about the vaccine if there were just a little bit of an incentive. So all those things we're doing, all those things we're sort of working on. And it's not just, not just one entity or one organization, but it takes a collaborative of organizations working together towards the same goal, which is exactly what we have going on right now in our community.
Okay. So I do appreciate you kind of staying, within this. I know that it's been a very challenging time for everyone in that industry trying to do what they can to help people, get the vaccine, so on and so forth. But, on top of COVID-19, we also have the ongoing issue of climate change that we're seeing, across the country, across the world, really. Thankfully, the last few weeks, there hasn't been as much smoke in the air here in Montana, but, for what was it, about 6 weeks, about 2 months, maybe, there was nothing but smoke in the air every single day. This is not something that's new for us, unfortunately. We are seeing this consistently year after year after year. I saw on your website that one of your pillars for your platform is addressing climate change. So at the local level, what is it that you plan to do to address climate change, within the city of Bozeman, as far as what the commission is able to control? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And I think, I'm of the generation that grew up under the cloud of climate change, right? As long as I can remember, the term climate change has been in the conversation, and that's something that's been inundating me in my experience. And so it's something that I think about often, and something that's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. And it's something that impacts all of us, and is critical to everything that we want to accomplish. We need a climate that's healthy. We need a climate we need to respond to climate in a way that's going to allow us to have the kind of future that we all want and deserve. So at the local level in Bozeman, in 2020, we passed our climate action plan. And so anybody who sort of knows anything about long-range strategic plans knows that after you pass a plan, the next piece of work is making sure that you're working to see it fully implemented. And so that's what I plan to do as a Bozeman City Commissioner, is to make sure that our climate action plan, which has a lot of important strategies, a lot of really good strategies, incredible amount of strategies, is fully implemented. And so some of those things are looking at how do we support and sustain a local food culture. We know that if you are able to source food from where you live, that cuts down on the carbon emissions that you produce to get food to you. It also does a lot to help people stay connected to their community and think about how they're using resources. So that's an example of something that I think could be strengthened from our climate action plan. We have a lot of intentions and a lot of planning to do to make sure that the fleet of cars that the city of Bozeman manages are transitioning away from fossil fuel powered cars and vehicles. So that's a piece of work that we need to keep working on. There are ways that we can lead by example and incentivize people moving away from having, huge lawns of just grass, and making it easier for people to, use and be excited about drought tolerant plants and landscaping that uses very little to no water resources. So all of those things, I think, are embedded, or at least connected to, in parts, our climate action plan. And so I really do feel that the bulk of the work of the commission over the next several years is going to be to make sure that we look to that plan, and we allow it to be implemented by aligning it with our budget priorities and giving it the attention that it deserves.
Absolutely. And, thank you for addressing that, because what we really do need is to see more action on the local level, because unfortunately we're not seeing enough action on the federal level. But save that conversation for another day. Christopher,
yes, I would love to have that with you.
As we are transitioning to the end of the episode here, for those of the people right now who are listening, who are residents of the city of Bozeman, who are trying to decide whether or not to vote for you, what is your final message to the people of Bozeman about why they should elect you to the city commission?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really hope that that my friends, neighbors, colleagues, friends in Bozeman vote for me because they've trusted me. They understand that I, more than know the housing issues that are impacting all of us. I live them. That they begin to see that many of the hardships that a lot of families in Bozeman that are currently experiencing are part of my early lived experience. So I know them intimately. And I have a lot in common with most of Bozeman. And so far in the commission, I've worked really hard to make sure that our voice and our needs were amplified at the highest level of local governments. And I'm going to continue to do that. And so my main message is that, if you want a Bozeman City Commission that understands the needs of our community, that's connected to the issues, and you want commissioners that have a history of working to make Bozeman better, then I'm your person. I'm one of the people that can help to get Bozeman to a place that really does include and work for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And where can everyone find you if they want to stay more involved with your campaign, learn more about you? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so there's basically two main ways to stay connected to the campaign online. One is my campaign website, which is just Coburn for Bozeman, all spelled out, .com. And my handle on both Instagram and Facebook is just at Coburn for Bozeman, for spelled out.
All right, everyone. If you want to get in touch with Christopher Coburn about his platform, there'll be some links in the description. So go ahead and just click into the description right now, and you'll be able to see those links that he just mentioned. Christopher, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Today.
I really appreciate it.
Appreciate this. And hopefully we'll see you back on in the future as an elected representative. So thank you. Thank you again for coming on.